Diabetes can affect your hearing, it can affect your balance, it can affect your cognition. Sleep can do the same. Balance problems, tinnitus, everything becomes part of something much bigger.
But when you lose your hearing, it really cuts you off from people, and it can be very difficult to foster quality relationship.
And we also know that people who treat their hearing loss with hearing aids reduce that risk of falling again.
Welcome back to Resonate the podcast. This is a show where science, story, and wisdom all meet. I'm your host, Lesleigh Smith. In this series so far, we've explored how hearing is far more than just your ears. It's actually the gateway to brain health, connection, and how we age. So we've talked about sleep, we've talked about attention, tinnitus or tinnitus, and how each of these can quietly shape memory and cognition. Today, we're bringing all those threads together in a coherent way. And we're going to explore why hearing, balance, memory, and cognition are all connected and how the health of one influences another. My guest today, Craig Lett, is an audiologist and PhD student from the University of Auckland, and he's part of the research team here behind Ear 360, which is Resonate Health's world-first 10-point map of hearing and brain health. Together, we'll dive into the science behind holistic hearing assessment, wraparound assessment, and what the data is telling us about the ear-brain relationship, how new approaches like Ear 360 will help catch problems early, long before they affect memory, balance, or quality of life. Craig, I'm delighted to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you. It's great being here.
It's awesome having you. I mean, this is a pretty cool initiative that we're doing, I think.
Yeah.
So before we get into the science today, I just really would love our listeners just to learn a bit more about you and about your background. So what brought you into audiology and this particular kind of line of research?
A little bit of a roundabout way. I actually used to be a primary school teacher.
Oh, is that right?
I was, and decided that wasn't my long-term career objective. So I went back to uni and was doing a general science paper, found out about audiology and just fell into it from there.
I love that. So you've gone from teaching kids to working with adults as well. So and a complete paradigm shift. That's fantastic. The thing I think is fascinating with Resonate Health is, as I was saying before, it's more than just ears. You know, we're looking at the entire person, and I think you and I have worked together for a long time, and what I've seen of you, and seen you in action and behind the scenes as well, you kind of personify everything that Resonate Health is. You know, so you stand for research, technology, and genuine care. You know, to help people live better. So I mean, that's what I've seen with working with you over the years. And it's more than just about helping people hear better, isn't it? You know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So we started off talking in the first episode with James and framing what this whole series is about. And as I've said again and again, healthy aging and living well and thriving, we're looking at it from a different perspective. With the starting point of hearing and as a gateway into thriving as we age. So let's just kind of dig into the science a little bit. Just tell me in layman's terms, why should we care about our hearing? So like, why does it matter for our brain health and cognition?
I guess it's all about, I suppose it's all about connection with the world around you. The brain wants to be in relationship with other people. And so it has ways to do that. And one way is through how we can see people, we can talk to people, and we can hear people. So hearing it's one of those vital senses that give us a chance to communicate and be part of the world around us. So when that's not functioning to its capacity, then we start to lose things. And you can see it particularly in older people who become quite socially isolated. because it's hard for them to communicate. It's hard for people to communicate to them. So they might stop being invited to things, or the family might not come and visit quite as often, or they may struggle to hear on the phone, to talk to people, and they just start to become much more insular.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen that myself at home with my parents. Or you might have one customer who's got more of a hearing loss, and they're sort of telling you what happens at parties, that they feel like people don't talk to them so much anymore. They'll talk to their partner, who then will reinterpret it for them,
Yeah.
and so they'll still get most of the information, but it's in a roundabout, distilled kind of way. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and as you mentioned, it's often other people who will notice challenges first.
Mm,
We had a friend who had a high pitched hearing loss, which makes it harder for them to hear in noisier situations.
right.
Loved coming out to restaurants and going out for meals, but partway through the evening would often just sort of retreat into themselves because it just got too challenging to keep on communicating and keeping on trying to ask for repeats and figure out
Yeah.
what was going on.
Yeah.
Got them hearing aids, back to how they used to be. It's amazing.
It's fantastic. Just little personal anecdote. Go down the rabbit hole for 2 seconds. Just bear with me. Um, I've worn hearing aids, as you know, since high school. And when you're a younger person wearing hearing aids, yeah, there are days where you just don't want to be that person.
Mhm.
And I would go out for brunch with mates, and it's amazing. I wouldn't realize that I had missed anything. So
Mhm.
if it was a denial day and I didn't want to be that person and I left my ears home, and I'm, at brunch chatting, I honestly would have no idea that I was missing anything, but my friends would pick up in like the first 10, 15 minutes
Mhm.
and go, "You are not wearing your ears today, Leslie." And I'm like, what have I missed? It's
Yeah,
so if it's you with the hearing problem, you don't know what you don't hear, right?
yeah,
So but yeah, you're very right. Other people around you will pick it up really quickly, and perhaps people might not be as direct as my friends are,
yeah,
and if they're more polite
mhm,
or whatnot, they might not say, but they'll know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what happens in your brain then, again, just high level, if I'm not hearing the full message, so your friend with the high pitched
Mhm.
hearing problem, so that would mean that he might not hear well in noise and might not hear the ends of the words as easy. What does that mean then for his memory or his attention or
Mm. Uh, it's, I mean, there are several sort of steps to
Mhm.
that process. So at the fundamental level, I suppose the the connections in the brain start to change. So again, the brain is trying to be part of the world around us. So if those listening sections are not being activated, it's almost like the brain reassigns them to other things. Typically, what happens is the listening system becomes overtaken by some of the visual systems.
right?
So there's some very nice research that looks at how people with hearing loss will find it harder to hear a voice in a crowd, but they will be better at picking out a face in a crowd.
Oh, wow.
So there are these actual physical changes that happen in the brain.
Mm,
Um, then you get things like listening fatigue, which is all about the energy. So if you think about the brain as having a finite amount of energy available for a day,
right.
if you have to spend more of that energy on listening and figuring out what people are saying,
Right.
then you've got less of that energy available for remembering what they've said. Um, you've got the whole keeping up with the conversation. So often you're in conversation with someone and you're
Yeah.
thinking not only about what they have just said, but you're thinking about what am I going to say in response.
Hmm.
But if you start to get behind because you're spending more time processing what they've said, you may not be able to contribute as much to the conversation, or you may start to lag behind and not
Uh,
understand what's happening.
so you might become like a wallflower a little bit,
A
and
little bit,
kind of
yeah,
watch what's going on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Conversely, I find sometimes if I jump in and monopolize the
hmm
conversation, then I can kind of anticipate what someone's going to say
hmm
in response. So, to be honest, I probably go back and forth between those two
yeah,
in a noisier, challenging
yeah.
situation.
So there are all of these
Mm,
listening strategies. So
mm.
people create these ways of getting around challenges.
Interesting. Okay. So what I'm hearing, and let me just reflect it back to you and tell me if I'm on the right track. So in simple terms, when the brain is constantly straining
Hmm.
to fill in what it can't hear, it kind of steals energy from thinking,
Yeah,
remembering, and I guess the quality of your connection, because
yeah,
you
yeah,
might not be as present because you're trying to, fill
yeah,
in all the gaps in the
yeah,
background
yeah,
without even knowing that you're doing it,
yeah,
and maybe a bit more fatigued. So, okay.
yeah.
Um, Now I'm aware that there's evidence now that treating hearing loss can slow down, or sometimes lessen the risk of dementia. So,
Hmm.
or cognitive decline. So, um, any comments on that?
Yeah, it's a huge topic of research.
Hmm.
There are very clever people all over the world looking into it deeply. Um, there are a wide range of types of studies that have looked at it. So you've got studies where they've looked at people who've worn hearing aids and found, oh, they're listening better, they're remembering better, which are lovely studies. But the type of study that you need is what's called a randomized control trial,
Hmm.
where you have two groups of people. One are treated with hearing aids and one are not.
Right.
And then you can compare them over time and see what
Right.
happens.
Okay.
So there was a very large study by Frank Lynn and his team that was published a couple of years ago, the Achieve trial. And that had two interesting outcomes. So they had a very large group of people. When they looked across the whole group of people, they said, we don't really notice much difference between the people who are treated with hearing aids and the people who weren't.
Right.
But then they dug in a bit deeper and they looked at the people who were at risk of developing dementia. And they found that the people who were at risk, the the chance or the changes that would happen with dementia were slowed down 48%. So
Wow.
almost half,
That's huge.
which is huge. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So for the people who went into the study as healthy adults, apart from their hearing loss,
Yep.
they came out as healthy adults, apart from their hearing loss.
Right.
But the people who had those other risk factors, who were already starting to go into
Mm.
those changes, and they could slow down those changes quite significantly.
Right. Right. That theme keeps coming up, and I hope that's what listeners at home will be the take home message, because when we were talking with Tim Stevenson about sleep, and he was saying these little like micro changes that you can make can really significantly affect your entire quality of life.
Mm.
And if you can improve your sleep, then it may, if you are at high risk of someone, developing diabetes or cardiovascular disease and things, that it can lower
Mm.
your risk, or maybe in the same instance, push out the timeline, so you can live your best, most quality life
Mm.
for longer. So it's fascinating. So again, it to me, this just reflects how hearing care helps your overall brain care, but then also helps your overall quality of life, right?
It
And
does. Yeah.
smaller changes, because getting your hearing looked at is it's not major surgery. It's not a life and death situation. So it's things that are within our control
Mm.
to do something about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It comes back to that idea of holistic care, and that we need to be thinking about the whole person,
Mm,
not just the just a hearing thing or just a visual thing. If you went to an optometrist,
yeah.
everything is connected. Um, Diabetes
Hmm.
can affect the hearing. It can affect your balance. It can affect your cognition. Sleep can do the same.
Hmm.
Balance problems, tinnitus, everything becomes part of something much
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about the whole person when you're talking to someone.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, if you think about it as the whole person, that is truly what client centered care is, because you do want to be considered as an entire unique person, right?
Mm.
Not just a cookie cutter, one of many, So
Absolutely. But then I would say have to take that one step further. So
yeah.
it's not just the person. You
Mm.
have to think about the family around them or the support
Ah,
systems around them.
of course.
So the wider you go, the more you have to think about, but the more um, uh, important I think the information becomes. So you start with the person, then you think about their social structures and their family supports, then you think about their place within the community, then you think about their place within the wider country, and how does it all flow together?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because you can make all the changes you want, but if your situation and your context aren't enabling you to consistently maintain said change, then
Yeah.
no, that's very good points. Um, Drilling a bit deeper now. So hearing as the gateway.
Mhm.
If we drill down just a little bit, you just mentioned about balance,
Mhm.
and how balance can affect your hearing, I guess.
Mhm.
And a lot of people may not know that the inner ear houses all the structure for not just your hearing, but also your balance system. So, can you just talk a little bit about how those are linked?
Yeah. And so the way I often would describe it to a customer is that there are three main parts of our balance
Mm-hmm.
system. So we get information from our muscles and our body, and we get information from our eyes, and we get information from the ear, or the balance part of our ear. And it all works together. And if one of those is out of alignment, then we get balance problems, because the brain is trying to fit all those pieces of information together, and they're not all fitting the way they should. And so the brain interprets that as a balance problem.
Right.
We also know things like uh, people who have hearing problems are more likely to have balance problems, or they have a higher risk of falling.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know that people who treat their hearing loss with hearing aids reduce that risk of falling again. Um,
That's fascinating.
Not 100% sure why. We think it's to do with things like effort and attention.
Mm-hmm.
There's also research that looks at the soundscape around us, so we can hear the differences in a room as we walk through it. We can hear the
Right.
difference that our feet make on different surfaces. We can feel those differences, but we can hear some of those changes as well.
Yeah.
And we use all of that information. So when some of that information is degraded or missing, it affects how we can move
Right.
through a space.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I think that's fascinating, actually. You think about like how the sound gets quite dead on a really foggy day,
Yeah,
or you can hear the hissing of the cars going past on a really wet day.
yeah.
That would tell you, oh, the footpath might be slippery outside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
sound of
Ah,
the tires on a road. If you're walking through your house at night and it's dark and you can't see,
hmm.
but you can hear the changes in your feet, or your breathing even changes as it
Yes,
bounces off different surfaces, and
yes,
you have an idea of where you are.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. Um, okay, so I think definitely there sounds like there's a connection there, obviously, and it's interesting to me that a change in your ear can change not only your confidence,
Hmm.
maybe too, for
Hmm.
some people, your mobility and your independence. Because if you feel like you're in your own little bubble, I would imagine it would be really hard to stay connected, or even to have the world around you feel as tangible and real, even
Mm.
as we are now. So interesting. So how we'll talk a bit more in a minute, I guess, about how the ear 360 assessment captures hearing and balance. So let's circle back to that in a second. But while we're talking about these aspects, why don't we jump to sleep?
Yeah.
And yeah, how does that affect mental load and effort, perhaps?
I guess sleep is a similar process to balance and things like that.
Hmm.
So you've obviously got a listening effort or listening fatigue side of things.
Yes.
You've got a noise exposure side of things. Tinnitus plays a role. The type of work people do plays a role.
Hmm.
But sleep is, when you look at the research, hearing can affect sleep. Sleep can also affect hearing. So from the hearing affecting sleep, that's things like if you've been working in a noisy job, you've got some tinnitus, you actually have, it's harder to get into the deeper levels of sleep. So people with hearing loss may not get the deeper quality levels of sleep that the body
Mm.
needs.
Right.
Um, uh, but the flip side of that is that people with with sleep disorders, things like sleep apnea,
Yep.
that can affect your hearing.
Oh, okay.
over time. So it's we think it's to do with the microvascularization, so the blood supply to
Right.
the ear and the oxygenation and
Yeah.
all of the changes that sleep apnea
Mm-hmm.
can cause with that.
Mm-hmm.
It can actually lead to loss of those higher frequencies
Right.
in our ear.
Interesting. That makes sense because I do know, when you have low oxygen levels or been deprived of oxygen, you can have a direct effect on your hearing. So
Mm.
that makes sense that it would be micro effects over a long period of
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. Ah, right. Fascinating. Okay. And there also is that effort loop that we were talking
Yeah,
about that poor hearing means more effort, tired brain, you're not sleeping as well. If you don't sleep as well, that makes you more fatigued, therefore everything normal's you have less resilience, but everything normal might feel harder, and so
yeah,
it's like the chicken or the egg, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And this is why that's holistic, because you
Ah,
get a bit more tired. So I'm not going to go out because it's harder to do that, and so you start to
mm-hmm.
reduce your socialization. You start
Mm,
to
true.
change your lifestyle around lots of different things.
True. That's definitely hammering home to me the point that you can't just look at all these things in isolation
Yeah,
because they're all so interrelated.
yeah.
Um Jumping ahead then, we've touched on it a bit, but if we could just dig a little bit deeper, we've mentioned the word cognition
Hmm.
a lot.
Hmm.
So for our listeners out there, what does that actually mean?
What is cognition?
Mm,
Uh, it's
just in your
in my
words, not
words.
not your like official definition, but just in your
Yeah,
words.
it's the memory and thinking processes of the brain. It's the way the brain processes information, stores information, retrieves information.
Mm, yeah. And so would I be right in saying that if you had a hearing problem, you had a hearing loss, there's some sounds you're not hearing as well.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that could add kind of like metaphorical background noise in the brain? Might not be the best analogy, but it just mean, or maybe a better analogy might be if you had a hearing problem and you're not hearing some sounds. Imagine a giant whiteboard and
Mhm.
you've got the cat in the hat, I don't know,
Mhm.
written on the
Mhm.
whiteboard. Some sounds, if you erased them out, would be missing. So it would take you a lot more effort to try to figure out the combination of what the cat in the hat was, because it would just be all the vowels, for
Mm.
example,
Mm.
or it would look like a scramble of letters that you're trying to figure out all the multiple possibilities. So
Yeah.
would that be a better way of describing it? Maybe that you're, instead of just hearing the cat in the hat, just like that,
Yeah.
it's taking much more cogs moving in the background to try to get to that
Yeah.
punchline.
I always try to. I guess I liken the brain a lot to a computer in some
Okay.
of my analogies
Okay.
with customers. And if you were saying with a hearing loss, you're not hearing, for example, you're
Hmm.
not hearing high frequency sound. So that's often the beginnings and ends of words. So
Okay.
it might be the difference between a P and a B or an S and an SH sound.
Okay.
So say you took that key out of your keyboard, you wedged out the S because you can't hear the S, so you're never going to type it with an S.
Right.
Then you had to type an SA.
Right.
It's still kind of going to make sense,
Hmm.
but you have to think a lot more about what do they mean here? Am I reading this correctly? It's harder to read,
Right.
and then the greater the hearing loss, you could start to
Take out an
take it
F, for
take it an
example,
F.
or
Absolutely,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Ah,
I mean, you could, and yeah. So it's sort of your whiteboard analogy,
right. Right.
but
Right.
in a computer way.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Um. Okay. So obviously, testing hearing
Hmm.
is really important then, because we
Mm.
do need to make sure that we're not missing
Mm.
the Fs or the
Yeah,
S's or the consonant sounds. So, talk to me about what you think should happen in a routine assessment for hearing.
yeah. Um, Hearing assessments are very good.
Hmm.
They do what they're supposed to do, but they also are not measuring everything. So I often think, and I say it to student audiologists when they come through, you can have two people with exactly the same hearing pattern on the audiogram or
Mhm.
the hearing level chart,
Mhm.
but they have very different experiences because it's how does that pattern on the graph relate to their life and the people that they talk to and the things that they have to do. So the hearing test measures the threshold. So it measures what are the quietest the quietest amount of sound information that's needed
Right.
to trigger a response in the
Okay.
ear.
So the softest sounds I can hear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So we measure across a range of we call them frequencies
Okay.
or pitches of sound.
Right.
If you think of a piano keyboard, you've got low pitches on one end, you've got high pitches on the
Mhm.
other end,
Mhm.
and we use um, we focus on the frequencies that we need to understand speech, and we test to see how well are you hearing each of those different frequencies,
Okay.
or how quiet can you hear it.
Okay.
There is a range that we call the normal range of hearing, which means that the majority of people should be able to hear the sounds at that point. It's very, very quiet. And then once we start to have to turn the volume up before you can hear it, that's where we start to talk about a hearing loss, because you
Right.
need more sound going in
Right.
before the ear can actually or perceive that sound.
Right. So if you have a hearing loss, the softest sound that you can hear is louder than somebody else. The volume has to be louder to hear
Correct.
it at the softest level for some people.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
But the way the ear is the way the ear functions, when a sound goes in, the ear separates it out into all of its component frequencies.
Right.
And so you might be hearing some of those frequencies, but not others, which is why when we talk about different letters and different speech sounds or environmental sounds,
Mhm.
um, people with a hearing loss, you can still hear someone talking, but it may not be as clear.
Right.
It's not that all of a sudden you can't hear a particular thing. It changes the clarity and the ability to make sense of the information.
And I reckon that would be why a lot of people wouldn't even realize that they might have a subtle or a mild hearing loss, because with or without my hearing aids in, I can hear you. I can hear your voice. I know who you are, where you are, and you feel loud enough to
Yep.
me. But you're right. I won't pick up on the subtleties. I won't know if you said cat or hat unless I know what your topic was and I'm
Yep.
looking at you.
Yes.
If I was looking at the TV, or the jug was boiling, or the rain should was going and you were talking to me, I would hear you. I'd hear blah 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 blah, but I wouldn't know what you were talking
Yeah.
about unless I
Yeah.
was really focused on you. So
And this is why you
that
have to
makes it
think about
tricky, doesn't it?
situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
Because
I'm not deaf, but
yeah,
I definitely have hearing loss. Yeah.
absolutely. But if you were someone who spent most of your time by yourself at home,
Hmm.
listening to the radio,
Hmm.
your experience of that level of hearing loss would be quite different to someone who had a very noisy household, lots of things going on.
Sure.
Even though you might have the same degree of hearing loss,
Hmm.
your
Or pattern
experience,
on the
the
graph.
pattern,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, you're experiencing it differently.
Right.
We often get the male female, the husband wife type of thing coming in, where the husbands are told that they're not listening. But it can be, there's a degree of familiarity where
Mm.
you might be in one room and your partner's at the other end of the house and talking to you, but you can't hear what they say because you're at a distance
Yes.
and the sound is trying to travel through a convoluted pathway.
Yeah.
Or you might have a hearing loss in that
Hmm.
same situation. So
Hmm.
it's challenging to unpick and unravel all of that information for people.
I tell you one situation that catches me up, and I've heard it again and again with customers, where your partner might not understand why you can hear perfectly well in some situations but not others. So let
Mm.
me give you an exact example. Over the kitchen table, um, you could be sitting, let's say, side by side on a um, you know, sun window bench seat,
Hmm.
having your cereal, chatting away, hearing everything word for word. Then you sit in a moving vehicle, exactly the same distance apart, same people talking, but now you've got road noise and maybe radio noise from the speakers. That situation is very difficult, where there'll be whole words chopped out of what's being said. Or again, the same situation, sitting the same way, whatever way you were sitting, but now in a restaurant or a restaurant / pub, where the noise level is even louder.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be really frustrating for partners where they're like, you're the same person, I'm the same person, we're having the same conversation, but yet, is it selective hearing,
Yeah. You
Yeah.
could hear me this morning, but you can't
Why
hear me
can't you
now.
hear me now? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it can be incredibly frustrating, I think.
Yeah.
And the difference is the amount of noise or maybe the listening effort in those
Yeah.
situations,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So you could add into that as well. So say it was a day and you
Mm-hmm.
had breakfast in the morning, conversing, no problems. If you drive to work together or something during the day,
Yeah.
a little bit more challenging in the car.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's had a busy day and they've got less brain energy left, and you're going out to something social in the evening, it's harder. There's less reserves available for listening.
Yeah. Yeah. You know me very well, Craig. Yeah, that's exactly me. By the time the evening rolls around, I'm just about written off. Funny. Okay, so that's how softly I hear.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the whole picture when it comes
Mm.
to hearing.
Correct.
What about how clearly you hear?
Yeah. So in the standard hearing test, you'll have someone look in your ears to check
Okay.
the physical appearance of them, make sure there's no wax
Mm-hmm.
or blockages or something going on in the ear canal.
Yeah.
They will test those quiet sounds, and they do it a couple of different ways to see where any problems might be coming from.
Right.
They would do a test using speech sounds, and in New Zealand we use what's called CVC words, which are 3-letter words. They
Okay.
start with a consonant, have a vowel in the middle, and they finish with another
Yes.
consonant.
Yep. Okay.
And we do a measurement where we are saying, when you have plenty of volume, are you hearing all of the sounds that we would expect? And then when we turn the sound down towards your threshold or the edge of your hearing,
Right.
we're hoping that you're getting about half of the sounds coming through. Lets us confirm the hearing test, but it also lets us understand how the
Right.
brain processes
Right.
and those sounds.
So it rules out if people are just pushing willy-nilly and random stuff.
Correct.
But it should also, of course, make sense that the parts of the words that you may miss should match with any tones on the graph that you're not hearing as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And occasionally you get, we can identify things like, it's kind of called auditory deprivation, which is probably a terrible term outside the industry, but it basically means if your brain hasn't been hearing the sounds for a while,
Mm-hmm.
it can get worse at understanding what that sound is.
Right.
So that's when we'd often see we're doing a speech test.
Mm-hmm.
If we start to turn the sound up louder instead of getting better, the results start to get a bit worse, or they flatten out.
Right.
That can improve over time.
Right.
Things like that, but it's an interesting test for us to really understand the processes that are going on inside the listening centres.
I think that would also give you a bit of a kind of a bouncing board to talk about like what people could expect if they were to have their hearing
Absolutely
be improved. So if they were to try hearing aids, then it kind of gives you a bit of a gauge as to how well they could be expected to do, or an indication at least. Yeah. Right. Great. Okay. So you check how healthy my ears are. You check and make sure I don't have any wax in my ears, because that would be what I would hope, is that my ears just blocked and you can fix me straight away. Make sure there's no infection. We're checking how softly I hear, how clearly I hear. That's all fine, but I don't live in a soundproof room. I live in a noisy environment with a small child. So what about more real world, kind of scenarios?
Yeah. Real world is always tricky because real world is so diverse and varied. So we have to turn it into some kind of clinical type of assessment. So the common one that we do is a speech and noise test, where we have sentences for you to repeat while we are playing background noise, and we make the background noise gets louder and louder and louder, to the point where it's very, very challenging to hear what the speaker is saying.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've had my hearing tested since I was tiny, because hearing loss runs in my family, and that's great. Great that there's tests that do that nowadays. Not just the beep in a fully silent room. Yeah, because it's hard to extrapolate that into walking down the street or listening in a cafe.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm lucky that I only struggle with a very tiny bit of tinnitus or tinnitus, which is any kind of ringing or buzzing, any sound really that you hear in your
Yeah,
head that isn't in the
yeah.
environment that you're in. What if I was somebody who had very, very loud tinnitus in my head? I would imagine that would be very difficult to hear those little beeps. So, what do you do in that situation?
It can be. Part of our training as audiologists is to pick up on those nuances while we're doing a test with someone.
Right.
So we start to notice if someone is struggling to hear or becoming less confident, I suppose, in their responses.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different ways that we can present sound to people. A typical way is to change from a sort of we call it a pure tone
Right.
to more of a wobbly or a warbly type of sound.
Right. So instead of a flat, steady kind of a hum
Yeah,
sound, it's a wiggly
yeah,
sound. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. That would make it a little bit easier to hear over top of that. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, that kind of brings me, if you don't mind,
Mm,
to talk about tinnitus a little bit. So just imagine if you did have roaring or screaming tinnitus in your
mhm.
head. I would imagine that that would really um affect you every day. So
Mm.
many of our listeners do struggle with tinnitus at home. So can you just tell me a little bit about how that might fit into this ear brain kind of equation?
Yeah, tinnitus is a. I mean, that's would be a whole series of
Yeah, yeah.
podcasts. I'm
In
sure
fact,
that.
we have we had a great guest, Grant Searchfield.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, yeah, and we talked quite a bit about tinnitus. But
Good.
for those listeners joining us now, just
Yeah,
high level. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So as you said, tinnitus are those internal noises, those ringing, buzzing, cicadas,
Mm-hmm.
bells. There are lots of different ways people hear it
Describe
and
it. Yeah.
describe it.
Mm.
It could be a single sound, it could be multiple sounds, it could come and go, it could change in pitch, it could change in volume, um, but it's can be very, very annoying
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. It's also kind of normal. I mean,
Mm,
everybody at some stage in their life probably will hear or experience it.
yeah,
So it's not always scary, but
correct.
I think the clincher is that if you do hear it and it does upset or concern you, I think the first step would be to talk about it
Yeah.
because a lot of people, like I just said, nearly everybody will experience it. So
Hmm.
it's these things that we need to be talking about and checking in with our friends because it can feel quite isolating, I reckon. Hey,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Anyway, sorry to
no,
interrupt you.
it's okay.
Mm.
It's sort of around 10 to 15% of people will have tinnitus at some time.
Hmm.
Around 1 or 2% will have it more permanent or more bothersome tinnitus. But as you said, most people will get it for a little bit at
Hmm.
some time.
Hmm.
The typical thing that we would see is someone notices some ringing in the ears. A couple of minutes later, it's gone again. Um, that's sort of the
Yeah,
typical thing.
yeah.
We also know things like about 80% of people with tinnitus have some degree of hearing loss. And we know that
That's
things
a
like
huge percentage.
it's a huge percentage,
Yeah.
but it also gives us confidence in how we can treat things. So, tinnitus is not something that you just have to go, oh, I've got it, it's annoying, I have to just learn to live with it.
Hmm.
There are often things that we can do.
Right.
Hearing loss is one of the triggers for it.
Yeah.
Stress can be a trigger. There are some medications that can be triggers. There are some
Hmm.
musculoskeletal things that can be
Hmm.
triggers. There are lots of
Too
things
much
to talk about.
noise, for
Too much
example.
noise?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So
Okay.
you always hear that story of I went to a concert and woke up the next day with the ringing.
Yeah.
So, oh, yeah, it's not great. But we'll often find that after a day or two, it disappears again.
Yeah. Um, it seems to me that we can have the tinnitus, and your brain kind of tries to fill in the gaps if it is a trigger maybe from a hearing loss where there might be certain pitches or sounds that you're not hearing so well. It could be linked to stress, anxiety, whatever's going on in your life. It can even be musculoskeletal, as you said, or you might be clenching your jaw, like all sorts of things. So the take home for me that I'm hearing from what you've said and what Grant has said is that talk to people, come in, get your hearing assessed as the foundation block, talk about it,
Mm.
because often we can calm the wider system, which helps to reduce tinnitus distress, but also help, improve sleep and mood, and or the chicken and the egg, improving sleep and mood might help tinnitus. So yeah, so it is always good to first chat to an audiologist or your GP if you're concerned about anything,
Absolutely.
and go from there. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah.
Great. So just to kind of summarize, because we've covered lots of different things. Again, the overarching theme is on the quest for healthy aging, because unfortunately we can't slow down time. We're changing the perspective that we're looking at that challenge through the lens of the ear. So using hearing as the gateway. And we've talked about all sorts of aspects of that: sleep, memory, balance, hearing, different aspects of hearing, with hearing and noise, hearing and quiet, and tinnitus. So how does Resonate Health wrap all that up in a holistic, human-centered way? Would you mind telling me about the Ear 360?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ear 360 is a way to try to measure across all of those different environments and try to bring it together in an understandable process for a person,
Right.
but also a way that they can measure over time, that they can see changes if they're happening. So we came to the idea of 360 partly because we wanted a holistic way of measuring hearing and aging, but also because we know that the traditional audiogram is not a good measure
It's not
for
enough.
the customer.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, I could have the exact pattern on the graph to you or 5 other people,
Yeah.
and all 5 of us would have completely different experiences,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good measure for what it is, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not a good measure for all of those different things.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to find a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ear 360 has these 10 points that we look at.
Okay.
So we start with ear hygiene. So it's looking at the physical nature of the ear. We look at hearing impact, which is how does changes in hearing, how could that affect day-to-day life and listening fatigue?
Mm-hmm.
We do those measures of hearing audibility. So we're looking at the speech range, we're looking at the higher frequency range. We do the speech testing, we do the speech and noise testing.
Yes.
We talk about tinnitus and the impact of tinnitus. We talk about sleep and the quality of sleep. We talk about memory and whether there are any changes in memory that warrant further referrals or further assessments.
Right.
And we talk about balance and we look at fall risk. So we're wanting to make sure that if there's anything that could be a problem,
Mm-hmm.
we want to pick it up early so that
Mm-hmm.
we can send people to places that will be able to provide that support, whether it's us or whether it's another provider.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, for our listeners at home, we also Craig has put together this amazing comprehensive guide to hearing. So, at the end of the podcast, we'll put a link and you can click on that and get your comprehensive guide, because it'll cover all of the information that we've talked about today, and all the parts of the ear and parts of hearing in quite a bit more detail, and give you some pointers as to what to do about it.
And if people are very much interested in the research behind a lot of these things, all of the references are listed at the back of the comprehensive guide as well.
Perfect. Yep. Yep. And there will be links on our website as well that you can go and find more information. That's quite a scope. So 10 different parts of the assessment. What was the kind of scientific reasoning behind building this like all-in-one assessment?
I think it would be around those theories of the whole person and the whole rather than looking at those individual bits.
And comorbidities, right? I mean, that's a fancy
It
word for
is.
saying that there's those chicken or the egg
Yeah.
relationships, right,
Yeah.
between hearing, memory, speech,
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating, I think. And even as you said earlier, there's a lot of people don't even know that if your cardiovascular health is more poor, or if you have diabetes, for example, that also can affect your hearing. And there's so many things.
Yeah. So we test 10, but there are, as you say, there are
Yeah,
lots more.
yeah. I would imagine too, this would be fantastic as a baseline
Mm-hmm.
to see how healthy you are and how
Mm-hmm.
you're going, but also if there are any bits that you need to look at, then you could look at those over time as well.
Yeah,
Um, and what I'm hearing is using this holistic 10 points to start with. It's getting us closer to understanding the whole person, not just the decibels that they can hear. Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And for your customers that you've done these ear 360s with, can you any examples of aha moments that have come to mind with anybody that you've seen?
I think the ones that immediately spring to mind are some of those, I suppose, more outliers where people have not expected a particular result.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that sometimes with memory.
Okay.
Um, Memories are an interesting one to measure because
Mm-hmm.
our brain is so complex
Yes.
that to be able to do a quick check with someone, you have to be quite specific of what you're looking at.
Mm,
So we're looking at some of those short-term recall and a few other things in there.
right.
And then we have a conversation with people about changes in memory because that's quite an important measure as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we see from time to time people completely, I was going to say completely fail, but they're not failing,
Right.
but
Right.
they're not meeting the level that they thought they were at
Right.
by quite a long way,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite a shock for people sometimes.
Right.
Uh, there is a measurement effect. So if people are a bit stressed about coming in and having these assessments done,
Yep.
that can make it harder
Of
to
course.
pass those. And people who went through school C will know the same thing, where
Yep.
the
Yep.
stress of the exam can actually cause you to do worse in the exam.
Yep.
So we talk about all of those things with people.
Right.
We've had people who they've got basically a normal hearing pattern when you look at the audiogram or the hearing chart, but they really struggle in noise. And we do
Mm,
a speech and background noise type of assessment and find that they really just don't do well at all. And it's
mm-hmm.
all about the processing of information in the brain.
Right. Right.
Um, and it can be quite unexpected for people. They may know that they've got a problem, but they don't realize the extent of it
Indeed.
or how it actually can affect their life.
I think it could be quite validating for people as well, though, because again, that sort of frustration of if you have been one of those people who've been really struggling and you've gone for, like, I don't know, a hearing screening or
Hmm.
something where it's like, no, you're the dots on the chart say you're fine. It's like,
Hmm.
but I really struggle. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it can be quite validating for people
Yeah.
to know, oh, okay, I can see why. And I suppose the next step is if any of the results pull out, or as you say, everything looks good, but here is an area to work on, or these two things could be better, then I would imagine you'd have some tangible things that they can
Mm,
do
mm,
to help, and you'd give
yeah.
them pointers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
um Now, the future of hearing care. So you're working on your PhD at the moment.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Does it have any relation to the Ear 360?
Uh, in a sideways path, I guess. It's much more around teleaudiology and family-centered care. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
thinking of how does the role of the family or your spouse or your significant other, how does their place in your journey affect your journey? Or
Mm,
how does your journey affect them? And it's then how do we use um, uh, technology and remote support services and things like that? How do we use those to help support that wider group
right.
of people?
Right. Going back to what you're saying, where true
Mm,
client-centered or family-centered care puts the person at the center, but then, as you say, you've got those circles of
you do.
influence and
It is.
situation around
Yeah.
them. That's really
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
So it
Great.
kind of came out, it almost came out of COVID to a degree where um, pre-COVID, we were getting very good at doing patient-centered care and
Mm-hmm.
starting into family-centered care within
Mm-hmm.
audiology,
Right.
and encouraging people to bring people to appointments with them
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding their context. Then we got into lockdowns, and we were doing a lot of remote work with people,
Mm-hmm.
where you're doing support through a phone or through a screen.
Right.
And as soon as you're through a screen, you're being invited into someone's house or their workplace or wherever it might be, but you can only see them.
Yes.
And they might have a large support circle or not around them,
Mm-hmm.
but you lose all of that context.
Yes.
So it's how do we start to unpack that? How do we start to understand that and make do better for people so that they don't have to always travel in to see an audiologist,
Mm-hmm.
which can be very difficult.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or even if you are local, you might just be time poor and not want to bother with traffic or
Absolutely.
parking or
Yep.
whatnot. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could be infirm and not be able to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I just broke my ankle a few weeks ago, and I know exactly what that's like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that hearing science in general is evolving from such a narrow kind of specialty into a window on broader entire human health.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great, and the more we can have these kinds of conversations, I think to get people thinking in a different way about empowering themselves to take control of their own health and well-being. I think the better, really, going forward across all different disciplines. But
Yep.
um, you and I come from the hearing background. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about Year 360 or?
Probably not about Year 360, but it's just that whole idea of the healthy aging. I'm just trying to remember what it was, but years ago I was in a lecture and someone was talking about healthy aging, and it was something like healthy aging is the ability to take control over your health decisions and your health choices.
Mm,
And so if you don't have the ability to do that, you don't have that control over your life. This is the decade, I believe, the 2020 to 2023, 2020 to 2030,
hmm.
the WHO decade of healthy aging,
Oh,
or
okay.
decade of the older person. I think I need to check which one it is. But they have a very lovely graphic that explains it, where you can think about a tree as the person's life expression. So it's the way they're living their life and what people see around them. But then you've got all of the roots underground that ground those life decisions and those choices. And that can be things like health. It could be things like your social network. It could be things like your physical and financial resources. So there's lots of things that all combine to let you make the choices that you want to make, to be part of the community, to have independence, to live in your own place or live where you want to live. And hearing is part of that because
Mm,
it contributes to the how do we interact with the people around us? How do we talk to our neighbors? How do we go to the grocery store and talk to people? It's a fundamental part of who we are. I think is
mm,
our ability to communicate.
yeah. One more thing to add to that, or maybe two little things. There's that quote from Helen Keller, which I'm not going to directly quote, but essentially it's something along the lines of when you lose your eyesight, it makes it more difficult to navigate either around the house or around your community. But when you lose your hearing, it really cuts you off from people, and it can be very difficult to foster quality relationships. Or to continue them. So and talking about whole person care and healthy aging and empowering people to take control. That's one of the beautiful things I think at Resonate Health, that we also have sound advice, which
Mm,
isn't really our topic for today, but I think it's pertinent given what you're talking about looking after the entire person and helping with communication and connection.
mm.
um, maybe just, if you don't mind, just in your words, like what are the sound advice sessions, and how are they beneficial to our customers?
So the sound advice sessions are um, monthly or fortnightly opportunities for our customers to come together
Hmm.
to learn about a topic, to socialize with each other, to enjoy a cup of tea or a drink and a biscuit
Make friends.
and make friends.
Yeah.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
part of that. Um, it's beyond their hearing and
Hmm.
beyond their hearing aids.
Hmm.
There are some of our studios are running craft or knitting circles, or it might be that you have a
Tai
book
Chi.
club or Tai Chi, and
Yeah.
there are ways just to enhance community.
Yeah.
Especially in some of our larger cities, I think we do lose some of that a bit. And modern society is less engaged with your neighbours in the way it used to be.
Yeah. No, that's so
So
true.
it's trying to find ways to allow people access to the people around them and to their peers.
To me, it's just that fundamental living it, breathing it,
Yeah.
doing it. It's such an easy thing to say that we're here to try to look after the entire person or to have client-centered care, or it's easy to have these terms roll off the tongue, but it's another thing to actually deliver it and to do it. And I think that is something different that we're trying to do. And even the podcast, trying to reach people outside of our four studio walls to just keep this conversation going and take some of the stigma away. Great. Well, just wrapping up a bit and kind of reflecting, what stays with me from the conversation is how profoundly interconnected everything is. Hearing, memory, balance, sleep, cognition. I mean, they're not separate systems. They're all kind of part of one orchestra, if I want to use a music analogy. And if one instrument is kind of out of tune, then the whole musical piece just sounds a bit different, right?
Yeah.
And to my mind, continuing that music analogy, the ear 360 is kind of like tuning that orchestra, or at least detecting which instrument might need a little bit of repair, or if we can detect that sort of disharmony early, then we can help people performing at their best for longer. Thank you so much for joining and bringing science and care all together for this work, and just reminding us that hearing is so important to our overall health and how it fits in human connection. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners out there, if you'd like to learn more about Ear 360, holistic hearing health, visit our website, resonatehealth.co.nz/podcast. It'll be down on the bottom of the page there. And you'll find more information about the 10-point assessment. You'll hear more about the research partners, the research links, as Craig said, and free resources on how hearing connects to sleep, memory, and cognition. There will be a free link where you can either download a PDF copy of our comprehensive guide to hearing, or you can even get a free copy delivered to you. And it's all about furthering education and not about making more sales. So, and would I be right in saying that the Ear 360 is about looking after the entire person, not about selling more hearing aids, ironically?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.